Welcome back to our special live coverage from Ferguson, Missouri, the small city in the American heartland that's once again erupted into something more reminiscent of a war zone. Peaceful protests overnight erupted just hours ago. And look at this. You see the SWAT teams armed with the riot gear, the military-style rifles. You know, again, what we saw Wednesday night, this time responding to more violence and looting in the town where Michael Brown, the unarmed teenager, was shot and killed 1 week ago today. Protesters, we understand, threw bricks and rocks and Molotov cocktails. According to reports, one person was shot and rushed to a nearby hospital. At least one police officer was injured by a brick thrown. HLN contributor Dr. Jason Johnson joins me now from Atlanta. He's a professor of political science at Hiram College, also the politics editor at The Source magazine. Dr. Johnson, good to have you with us this morning.
Yes, good to be here.
And, you know, that quote that I read just before the break, that's yours. You say that while, of course, no one wants violence and property destruction, this is also true. If American history has shown us one thing, it is only violence, protests, and massive civil unrest that ever leads to any substantive change. I'm going to give you a little time here. Explain.
Well, sure. I mean, if you look at the beginning of this country, it started with looting. It was the Boston Tea Party. We started throwing tea over the side of boats because we weren't happy with how we were being taxed. If you look at most of the civil rights movement, if you look at the Indian rights movement, if you look at most movements in this country, or even at a macro level, if you look at cities, integration of housing, integration of police forces, integration of fire departments didn't happen until the 60s, 70s, and 80s, usually after there was urban unrest and violence. So while it's disturbing and sad that peaceful marches don't seem to lead to the kinds of changes that we want as soon as we would like, this unfortunately is American history. And so, you know, the civil rights investigations that are going on right now in Ferguson, that didn't happen until the rioting. And clearly, as we've seen from the police behavior, there should have been civil rights investigations into a lot of the behavior happening there long before what happened to Mike Brown.
Okay, but Jason, I just want to read you something from Facebook that somebody posted. They said, nothing screams justice louder than rioting, looting, arson, and straight-up thuggery. Way to help the cause. Now, history might tell us one thing, but when you have even the reports of last night where there was looting and there were people, civilians in that community coming out and standing in lines and saying, no, we're not doing this. Don't we, of course, history has its place, but haven't we evolved since then that we can do this without the violence?
You would think so.
And doesn't the lines of people there, don't the lines of people there last night tell us so?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because it's the anger that leads to fear, which leads to change, unfortunately. If you think about it, most of the original protesters who were out there, they were completely peaceful. And what was the response from the police? Shooting tear gas and getting highly militarized before the looting actually started. It wasn't until there were 3 or 4 nights of buildings getting burned by the people who weren't behaving properly that the governor decided, okay, I guess we should bring in state troopers. That the president decided, okay, I guess we're going to bring in more aggressive DOJ investigation. So unfortunately, it doesn't seem like peaceful behavior is listened to the way that it should in this country. And that's a sad thing, because you would think that the people who are having church vigils and the people who are walking through the streets peacefully, that should have been enough. That should have been enough to get the officer's name released, but it didn't. It wasn't until violence occurred and there was a contrast between polite behavior and protesting and people acting like thugs that we saw any change.
You know, Dr. Johnson, even as I was here speaking with people who were protesting, who are here with those signs, hands up, don't shoot, I asked, all right, so when the cameras are gone and the protests, and what will be the actual change? And many of them say that they don't believe that anything's going to change after watching all the protests after Trayvon and all the protests after Renisha McBride, and in some ways the same characters, Al Sharpton, Ben Crump, Jesse Jackson is now in town. You've got Martin Luther King III back. And what has changed? What will be the change even after all the unrest?
No, there's nothing that has changed right now. What is probably going to change is next April, when there are elections in town, you're going to see a different city council. What's probably going to change is the likelihood. I don't know what's going to happen with Darren Wilson. We don't know if that guy will be convicted of anything or if he'll even be found guilty. But I can certainly guarantee that over the next couple of months, the number of civil rights cases that are going to be brought against Ferguson police officers will darn near bankrupt that office. I suspect that once these investigations are over, that the governor will probably politely ask the chief of police to transfer to some other area because he's lost community trust. So I do think there's going to be changes down the road, but are we going to see the kind of wholesale change that people want, a better, healthier, non-racially driven relationship between the community and an occupying police force? Unfortunately not. Are we going to see the president step up and do something about the militarization of local police when they use that equipment irresponsibly? I don't know if we'll see that change. I would like to hope that we will.
Well, all we can do is wait and see what those changes are going to be. HLN contributor Jason Johnson, thank you for being here. Victor, so good to see you this morning out there. As Victor's, co-anchoring, so we're going to go back to him several times. It's funny not to have him in the studio with me today, but thank you guys so much.